He left the apartment every morning without a word. Not even a glance, not even a lie. She asked once. He said, "What?" and walked away. So one day she did the same, but she didn't shut the door behind her. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. My name is Marissa Wynn, and I'm 24 years old. It starts small. That's the trap. Not with slamming doors or cheating texts or screaming fights on front lawns, just a quiet moment, repeating, until one day it's not so quiet anymore. Until it's a rhythm you didn't choose, but now it plays in your head even when you're alone. I used to think something as small as a bye wasn't worth fighting over. I used to think if I brought it up again, I'd sound needy, petty, like I was keeping score over invisible things. But I wasn't, because there's a difference between someone forgetting and someone deciding not to say goodbye to you. I met Ellis in a quiet summer that already feels like it belonged to someone else. We met at a barbecue my roommate dragged me to. One of those humid Toronto evenings where the sidewalk never really dries and the mosquitoes come for your ankles. He was standing by the grill with one sneaker untied, flipping veggie burgers for people he didn't know. He offered me one like he'd known me for years, and I stayed standing beside him long after I finished eating, just to keep talking. He was 26, a little older, steady, funny, the kind of guy who owned real tools and had a spreadsheet for his rent. I was 22, still figuring out if I wanted to keep my part-time gallery job or go back to school for something more stable. He made things feel safe, simple. That first year, everything was soft. Movie nights, brunches with his friends, birthday notes on the fridge. He'd say, "Back in a sec," even if he was just going to the corner store. I didn't realize I'd started counting on those tiny moments until they started disappearing. It happened slowly. By the time I noticed it, I couldn't remember the last time he'd actually looked at me before walking out the door. He'd say things like, "Where's my debit?" while pulling on his hoodie, sometimes reaching into my purse for it, because he knew I'd probably used it last night to grab takeout. I'd be sitting on the couch, one slipper half off, looking up at him with this quiet pause in my chest. And then he'd be gone, just like that. Headphones in, cologne still hanging in the hallway air, no bye, no love you, not even a glance. The first few times, I let it slide. Maybe he was in a rush. Maybe the bus app said 3 minutes and he didn't want to miss it. But then it became every time. He'd know he was leaving. I'd know he was leaving. I'd be sitting right there, awake, alert, watching him grab his phone and wallet, waiting, and nothing. I tried to make it light at first. "You're not even gonna say bye?" Sometimes he'd stop, blink, and say, "Bye," like it was an afterthought. Sometimes he wouldn't even turn around, just keep walking as if I'd asked him about the weather. The door would shut, and I'd sit there, holding the weight of his silence in my lap like something wet. I asked myself 100 times if I was overreacting. He wasn't cheating, he wasn't screaming, he wasn't pushing me or belittling me or calling me names. He just stopped saying goodbye. But what does it mean when someone who says they love you doesn't think you're worth a 2-second glance before they leave? The bus stop was at the end of the block, barely a 2-minute walk. He had so many chances. He could have said it while he was looking for his keys, while he was brushing his hair in the mirror, while I handed him his debit card. But he didn't. And that did something to me. It turned my mornings into countdowns, made me tense every time he started getting ready. I'd hold my breath and wait, hoping today would be the day he'd remember. Sometimes I'd say it first. "Bye, have a good day," with a smile that didn't quite fit anymore. Most days, he didn't respond. I started noticing things. How he'd lean into his phone more than he leaned into me. How he'd eat while scrolling instead of asking about my day. How he stopped holding my hand when we crossed the street. I started Googling things I never thought I would. Boyfriend doesn't say bye. Is this emotional neglect? Am I being too sensitive in my relationship? There were forums, threads, other women typing out the same ache in different fonts, and one post stood out. It said, "It's not about the goodbye, it's about being seen." I sat with that for a long time. I thought about the way he still made plans with me, how he still brought home bubble tea on Fridays, or sent me TikToks he thought I'd like, how he still asked about my period cramps, or offered to drive if it was raining, and yet, when he left in the morning, I didn't exist. One night, I decided to test it. I waited in the kitchen while he got ready. I didn't say a word, just leaned against the fridge and watched. He asked where his earbuds were. I pointed silently to the counter. He didn't say thanks. He walked to the door, adjusted his jacket, sprayed on cologne. I stayed still. He turned the knob and walked out. I waited 5 seconds, 10. Then I opened the door and said quietly, "Ellis?" He turned around on the sidewalk, earbuds in. "What?" he said. "Nothing," I said, and shut the door. I cried over that nothing. That night, I didn't sleep much. It wasn't like before, when I could curl into the silence and call it comfort. Now the silence had teeth. I kept hearing the echo of his steps down the sidewalk, the clink of the gate, the soft sound of the door closing behind him as if it belonged to a stranger. Ellis came home past 10. I was on the couch, half watching some show I didn't care about. He didn't say much, just dropped his keys in the bowl, grabbed a yogurt from the fridge, and scrolled through his phone while standing in the kitchen. No hug, no "how is your day?" Maybe that's when I started inventorying the gaps, noticing every missing word, every skipped touch, like I was tallying absences in a relationship that used to feel full. I didn't say anything that night, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't know what to ask anymore. I'd already tried asking why, and all I got were shrugs, or worse, nothing. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. I made tea, sat at the table, and watched the window. I waited for the rhythm, the steps, the jacket, the cologne, the earbuds, the door. I didn't say goodbye, neither did he. That day, I started writing things down. Just a note in my phone. Wednesday, no goodbye. Asked for his debit again. Didn't make eye contact. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I just needed to see it, to confirm I wasn't imagining it. By Friday, I had a week's worth of tiny nothings. A week of no goodbye, left without looking, asked where his belt was, but didn't wait for a response. It looked small in bullet points, but when I reread them, it felt enormous. I texted my best friend, Lena. "Do you think it's weird he never says bye? Like never?" She didn't reply for 3 hours. She was at work. When she finally did, she sent one line. "It's not weird. It's cold." That word stuck with me. Cold. Ellis wasn't mean. He didn't lie or cheat or blow up at me. He just cooled. Cooled in a way that felt gradual, like the heat being turned down so slowly you don't notice until you're shivering. That weekend, we had dinner with his sister. I watched how easily he said goodbye to her when we left. A hug, a take care, even a dumb joke about her parking. I kept quiet in the Uber home. He was scrolling again, some sports thing on his feed. At the red light, I asked, "Do you love me?" He looked up, confused. "What?" I said it again, softer. "Do you love me?" He laughed a little, like it was a weird joke. "Of course I do. Where's this coming from?" I shrugged. "You don't say goodbye anymore." He blinked. "Seriously? That's what this is about?" "No," I said. "It's about not knowing if you see me when you leave." He shook his head and looked back at his phone. "You're overthinking it." That was the first time I didn't believe him. The following Monday, I asked Lena if I could stay with her for a few days. I didn't explain, and she didn't push. Just sent me a key code to her apartment and said, "I'll be out most evenings, but the couch is yours." I waited until Ellis left for work, again, no goodbye, and packed a small overnight bag. Just enough for 2 or 3 days. I left sticky note on the counter. "Staying with Lena, I need some space to think. No drama, no threats, just space." He didn't call. That night, he texted me. "Is this because of the goodbye thing?" I didn't answer. The next day, nothing. The day after that, he sent, "This feels extreme, Mar. We're not broken." I didn't respond. Not because I was punishing him, but because I wasn't sure if I was broken. Quietly, invisibly, slowly. At Lena's, I sat with the silence in a different way. No waiting for footsteps. No wondering if a door would open or shut without a word. She came home late Tuesday and found me sitting on her rug, going through old photos on my phone. "Was it always like this?" I asked. She didn't sit, just leaned on the doorway. "You were happier before." "I mean the beginning. Was it always headed here?" She thought for a second. "Honestly, I think Ellis is the kind of guy who gives a lot early on, but once he's comfortable, he stops showing up." That phrase hit something in me. Stops showing up. I didn't sleep well that night, not because I missed him, but because I wasn't sure what I was walking back into. On Thursday, he called. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail, said he wanted to talk, that he missed me, that this was all kind of sudden and confusing. But what was confusing, really? What was sudden? I'd been living in that silence for months. He was just hearing the echo now. Still, I agreed to meet. Saturday afternoon, a coffee shop halfway between Lena's place and ours. I got there early. He showed up 5 minutes late. He looked tired. That shook me more than I expected. We sat. I ordered an iced tea. He got a black coffee. For a full minute, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I didn't realize it mattered that much to you." I looked at him. "Saying goodbye?" "Yeah, I always told you where I was going." "That's not the same." He looked at his hands. I didn't think it was a big deal." I took a breath. "That's the problem, Ellis. You didn't think about it." He stared out the window. "So what now? We end things over a word?" "It's not just a word," I said. "It's every moment you had the chance to see me and didn't. It's walking out the door like I was furniture." He was quiet. "Then, do you want to break up?" "I don't know," I said, "but I don't want to keep disappearing in my own life." He nodded, slowly, like the sentence had weight he hadn't expected. That afternoon ended without a decision. We hugged. Awkwardly, I went back to Lena's. He went home. The next morning he texted, "I want to talk again, properly this time." The text sat unread on my phone screen for almost an hour. I saw it. I even read it twice. But something in me didn't rush anymore. Maybe it was the weight of those weeks. Maybe it was just clarity, settling into my bones like snow. Eventually I replied, "Tomorrow, same place, noon." He said okay. I spent that evening folding my things back into my overnight bag. Lena was out, but she'd left a little note on the mirror. "Proud of you, no matter which way this goes." The next day I walked slower than usual. It wasn't nerves, not exactly. It was that strange pause your body takes when it knows something might end, or start over, or twist into something unrecognizable. When I walked into the coffee shop, Ellis was already there. Different shirt, same expression. We sat at the same table. He looked up. "Thanks for coming." I nodded. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said, about disappearing." I stayed quiet. "I looked through our messages," he continued. "From the past year, you always said goodbye, every time I left, even when you were annoyed, even when I was being cold." He stopped. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "I think I got lazy with you, I thought you'd always be there, so I stopped trying." That landed harder than I thought it would. "Trying what?" I asked. "Trying to show up," he said. "To be present. I'd say where I was going, or drop off food, or make plans, but I didn't look at you. I didn't leave the way someone leaves a person they care about." I blinked. It was the first time he'd named it. "And the weird thing is," he added, "I didn't even realize how far I'd checked out." "Until I left," I said. He nodded. "Yeah." For a long time, neither of us spoke, just the hum of espresso machines. A baby crying somewhere near the window. Then he asked, "Would you be willing to try again, if I showed up?" I should have felt relief, or hope, or some emotional swell that told me I still loved him, but what I felt was tired, because love shouldn't require absence to be noticed. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking. That surprised me. "Ellis," I said quietly, "you're not a bad person, but I don't want to be in a relationship where I have to disappear for you to remember I exist." He looked like he wanted to argue. His lips parted, then closed again. I kept going. "I don't want to keep asking for scraps of attention. I don't want to sit on a couch waiting for someone to turn around." He nodded slowly. His throat moved like he was swallowing something thick. "I think I need to relearn what it means to be alone," I said. Not as punishment, just as protection. There were tears in his eyes now, but he didn't argue. He didn't plead. He just nodded once. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all the ways I stopped showing up." I believe he meant it. We stood, no long goodbye, no promises. Just a soft pause between breaths. When I stepped outside, the air felt cleaner. I went back to Lena's to grab the rest of my things. She hugged me, tight, and said, "Proud, proud, proud." That night, I slept at my own apartment. Alone. Not the lonely kind, the chosen kind. It was strange to be back in that space. Same couch, same mug rack, same lavender candle on the shelf. But it was mine again. And the silence? It didn't bite anymore. A week passed, then 2. Ellis didn't call, didn't text, neither did I. Some nights I wondered if I'd made it too big a deal, if I'd thrown away a relationship over something small, but then I remembered the days I sat frozen on the couch, waiting for a simple goodbye. And I knew it wasn't small. It was never small. It was about being seen. It was about the fact that someone who saw me, truly saw me, wouldn't walk out of a room without wanting me to feel their presence, even in their absence. Then something happened. At the end of the 3rd week, I got a letter. An actual letter. No envelope, just folded neatly and slid under the door. It was from Ellis. I recognized his handwriting. Blocky, neat. Marissa, I won't call or text again. You asked for silence, and I hear that now. I just wanted to say thank you, not sarcastically, genuinely. Thank you for showing me where I stopped loving out loud. I don't expect another chance, but I'm going to start saying goodbye now, to everyone who matters. And when I do, I'll think of you. Ellis, I sat on the floor with that note in my hand for a long time, not crying, not shaking, just breathing, because sometimes the closure isn't a fight. It's a folded page and a quiet door. A month after Ellis's letter, I moved. Not out of desperation, not to escape, but because I'd begun seeing the shape of myself again, and it didn't quite fit the old apartment anymore. That space had held too many silences, too many moments where I waited by the door like a ghost no one said goodbye to. I found a small studio on the East End, closer to the gallery I worked at part-time. Nothing fancy, creaky floors, old windows, radiator heat, but it felt clean, empty in a good way, like possibility. I didn't announce it to anyone, not even on social, just told Lena and my manager. I boxed up my things over a week, took my time with it. Ellis never reached out again, and I was grateful for that. He gave me what I asked for, distance and the dignity of space. One afternoon, while sorting through an old tote bag I hadn't used in months, I found a tiny folded receipt. It was from a bookstore, one we'd gone to together back in the first year. The note on the back was mine, a scrawled reminder in pen. Say goodbye every time, just in case. I couldn't remember writing it. Maybe I jotted it after we read some quote on the wall that stuck with me. Maybe I felt it before I could put it into words. But there it was from a version of me who already knew. Living alone taught me things I hadn't expected. I got used to brushing my hair in silence, lighting a candle in the evening just because I wanted the scent, cooking for one without the sting of absence. But more than that, I noticed how I treated myself. I said goodbye when I left the room, even just in my head. I started sending myself little affirmations in emails, like a ridiculous boss leaving encouraging post-its on my desk. I took longer walks, answered fewer texts out of obligation. I started seeing people again, but not in a dating way, just coffees, art shows, a rooftop night with Lena, where we split a bottle of cheap red and made a list of all the things we didn't miss about our exes. He never listened, she said about hers. I thought for a second. He never looked, I said about mine. And that stuck with me. Around the same time, I started helping curate a new exhibit at the gallery, one about presence and domestic space. We hung soft photographs of windows, slippers, bed sheets crumpled by memory. It felt like therapy. One afternoon, while labeling a piece, a woman maybe in her 50s came in. She paused at a photograph of an empty doorway bathed in morning light. She said, "That's what it looks like when someone doesn't say goodbye." It wasn't even a question. I turned toward her and said, "Yeah." She looked at me with kind eyes, like she knew. Maybe she did. People carry so much inside their silences. That weekend, Lena and I went to a pop-up market. While browsing a table of hand-printed linen bookmarks, she nudged me. "He's here." I didn't need to ask who. I saw Ellis 3 stalls down, alone, flipping through a vinyl bin. He looked different, not drastically, but like someone who'd spent time with his own thoughts. He glanced up, and our eyes met. A pause, a breath. Then he gave a small wave. I returned it. We didn't walk over, didn't talk, just acknowledged each other like people who had once tried, once hurt, and once let go the right way. Lena whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I actually am." She smiled. Want to grab a smoothie and gossip about this hat vendor's terrible taste? I laughed, desperately. We walked on. The truth is, the pain didn't vanish. It just softened, became a shape I could hold without bleeding. Every now and then, I'd still think of him, of the doorway, the shoes by the mat, the space where a goodbye should have been. But now I saw it for what it was, a mirror, and I'd learned to stop disappearing in my own reflection. One evening, a few weeks later, I got home late, rain on my shoulders, bag full of groceries. The hallway light in my building had burned out, and everything felt dim. I stood in my doorway, wet and a little cold, and whispered to myself, "Goodbye today. See you tomorrow." I smiled, locked the door behind me. I didn't expect life to feel different so quickly. But there's something about reclaiming a small silence, about taking back the moment someone used to skip over you, that creates a ripple through everything else. The studio on the East End became my little ritual space. Every morning I'd open the curtains, let the light spill across the uneven floorboards, and say a quiet greeting to the day. Not out loud every time, sometimes just with a breath. I was learning, slowly, that a relationship is not measured in grand gestures. It's shaped by the smallest consistencies. The nod before the door closes, the soft check-in, the presence that doesn't require performance. And now that I had space from Ellis, I could finally see more clearly what had been missing. Not the goodbye itself, but what the goodbye symbolized. Presence, attention, a moment of anchoring. One Saturday evening, Lena came over with dumplings and a stack of skincare samples she'd stolen from work. We ate cross-legged on the floor, watching a documentary neither of us actually absorbed. At some point she looked at me, squinting. "You're lighter," she said, like something unclenched. I didn't deny it, because it was true. I was still grieving the relationship in odd, unexpected waves. At night, while folding clothes, in the morning, when passing some familiar scent in the street, in the little domestic habits I'd built with someone who no longer inhabited my day-to-day world. But now the grief had room to move, to stretch, to breathe. One night, while organizing my closet, I found his hoodie, the dark gray one I used to steal. It smelled like detergent now, not him. I folded it gently into a donation bag. As I did, I whispered the softest goodbye, but this time it wasn't to him. It was to the version of me who waited at the door. Around the same time, I started journaling, not structured entries, just fragments, questions, lists. A few confessions I was finally honest enough to write. I forgot how to choose myself. I kept hoping he'd notice without me asking. I stayed longer than I should have because the quiet scared me. I'm not scared anymore. I also started taking short trips on my own, day trips to art fairs, bookstores, a lakeside trail. I learned to fill my days without shrinking to fit someone else's rhythms. One afternoon, while sitting on a park bench reading a slim poetry book, an older woman sat beside me. She had a kind smile, lined eyes, hands full of gentle history. After a minute, she nodded at the book and asked, "Good read?" "Yeah," I said. "It's soft, simple, about letting go." She hummed. "Letting go is rarely simple." I smiled. "I'm learning that." We talked for a while. Nothing deep, nothing heavy, just strangers exchanging small truths. Before she left, she said something I didn't fully understand until later. Some people say goodbye without words. Some say words without goodbye. It takes time to learn the difference. She walked away before I could respond. That night, I thought about her, sentence again and again. Ellis had given me words, but not presence. Presence comes first, and I had finally stopped accepting its absence. As spring edged in, life kept moving. Work at the gallery picked up. I started planning a small collage series I'd been thinking about for years, but never gave myself permission to begin. I was sitting on the floor one day, sorting through magazines for textures, when my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was simple. "This is awkward, but is this still Marissa's number? This is Jules from the gallery opening last month." I remembered him, soft-spoken, gentle smile, asked thoughtful questions about a piece that everyone else walked past. We'd spoken for only 5 minutes, but it was enough to leave an impression. I typed back, "Hi, Jules. Yeah, it's me." He replied, "No pressure. Just wanted to ask if you'd like to grab coffee sometime. If not, totally okay." I stared at the message for a while, not frozen, just aware. Aware that answering didn't mean replacing anyone. Aware that healing didn't require rushing. Aware that this moment was mine to decide. So I typed slowly. Coffee sounds nice. We ended up meeting a few days later. It wasn't romantic, not yet. Maybe not ever, but it was kind. Steady, a conversation with eye contact. A departure with a gentle, "Take care, Marissa," not a grand goodbye, but a real one. And I realized something important walking home that evening. A goodbye isn't about fear someone won't come back. A goodbye is a small way of saying, "I saw you while I was here." As the months passed, I learned to say it to myself. In mirrors, in quiet kitchens, on stairwells, at crosswalks, with every step into and out of my own life. Presence, attention, anchoring. 3 things I no longer begged for. 3 things I now gave myself freely. And sometimes, rarely, I still thought of Ellis, not with anger, not with longing, just with a soft understanding that we had reached the edge of what we could be together. Some people leave without goodbye. Some people say goodbye without leaving. And some people eventually learn to do both with grace. I locked my studio door one night, feeling the cool brass under my hand, and whispered as I flicked off the light, "Good night, Marissa." Gentle, anchored, seen. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.